is the SonicWall TZ670 high availability unit actually good for? Who should walk away? And does the price make sense for a typical office that just wants reliable internet? If you're already scrolling through the endless list of firewalls and wondering whether you need a dedicated HA pair or can get by with a single appliance, that hesitation is exactly what I felt before I dug into the specs and the chatter from network admins. The reality is, a lot of small to mid businesses assume one firewall is enough until the moment a WAN outage hits and everything grinds to a halt. That's where a high availability, HA, setup like the TZ670 can either be a lifesaver or an overkill, depending on how you run your network. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let's start with the basics of what the TZ670 actually does. It isn't a standalone firewall. It's the secondary unit you pair with a primary SonicWall, essentially a mirror that takes over the moment the primary fails. For enterprises that run critical voice-over IP, remote desktop services, or hosted applications, that automatic failover is the difference between a brief hiccup and a multi-hour outage that costs money and reputation. The unit is engineered for distributed enterprises and mid-size organizations that need robust, continuous protection. In practice, this means you plug the TZ670 into your existing firewall cluster, enable the HA mode through SonicWall's Network Security Manager, NSM, and let the software handle health checks and synchronized state tables. When the primary's health drops below a threshold, maybe a hardware glitch, power loss, or even a severe firmware bug, the backup steps in almost instantly, preserving existing connections and keeping traffic flowing. Now, who should buy this? If you are a managed service provider, MSP, or an IT director of a company with multiple sites that rely on a consistent WAN link for cloud services, the TZ670 makes sense. Imagine you run a law firm with a central data center and branch offices that need to access case files stored on a secure server. A single firewall could become a single point of failure. The cost of a half-day of downtime for a busy practice can easily run into the thousands. Adding the TZ670 as a redundant node gives you peace of mind and the ability to meet compliance standards that demand continuous protection against zero-day attacks and encrypted malware, something SonicWall touts with its RTDMI, IPS, and anti-malware engines. On the flip side, if you're a small business with a handful of users, a single next-gen firewall, maybe a SonicWall TZ350 or even a cheaper UTM appliance, is likely sufficient. The TZ670 is priced for an organization that already budgets for redundancy, so buying a second unit just to meet a nice-to-have requirement might not be justified. In those cases, you could instead invest in a UPS and a solid ISP contract, which often yields a more cost-effective uptime guarantee than a dual firewall setup. Practical strengths show up in daily operations. First, the 10 GbE interfaces are a real benefit if your network backbone runs at high speeds. Many mid-size firms are already upgrading from 1 GbE to 10 GbE to handle heavy video conferencing, large file transfers, and virtualization traffic. The TZ670 can hook into those uplinks without becoming a bottleneck, and its redundant design means you won't have to reconfigure routing tables every time the primary unit gets replaced or upgraded. Second, central management via NSM streamlines compliance reporting. You can pull logs from both the primary and the secondary firewalls in a single dashboard, which reduces the time you spend stitching together data for audits. That's a tangible productivity boost for IT teams that are already stretched thin. The weaknesses are just as important to consider. Because the TZ670 must be paired with a primary unit, you're looking at a double purchase cost, plus potentially higher licensing fees for the combined threat intelligence services. The HA mode does require careful synchronization of firmware versions. If you apply a patch to the primary and forget to update the secondary, you could end up with a mismatched pair that fails to fail over correctly. That sort of maintenance overhead is something you need to factor into your operational budget. Another hidden trade-off is the physical footprint. While the device itself is rack-mountable, you'll need space for the second appliance and redundant power supplies, which can be a constraint in a crowded server room. Real-world use cases help illustrate these points. One client I spoke with runs a remote learning platform that streams high-definition video to thousands of students across the globe. Their main firewall handled the traffic fine, but when a firmware update caused a brief outage, the whole streaming service stopped, and they lost a day's worth of revenue. After adding the TZ670 as a backup, they saw a smooth switchover during a simulated failure test, with no interruption to live streams. For them, the extra cost was recouped within weeks. Conversely, a boutique consulting firm with 10 employees tried a similar HA setup but found that the added complexity of managing 2 firewalls outweighed the benefit. They reverted to a single, well-maintained firewall and added a secondary ISP line, which gave them the redundancy they needed without the extra